The sweat dripped down the man's face as he pushed himself to run faster. His lungs burned with every breath, but he couldn't stop now. He had to keep going. Up ahead, he could see the faint outline of a small town. It was just a speck on the horizon, but it was enough to give him hope. He knew that if he could just make it there, he would be safe. He stumbled and nearly fell, but caught himself at the last second. He couldn't afford to lose his footing now. The road behind him was long and empty, and there was no one around to help him if he fell. As he drew closer to the town, he could see more details. There were buildings and lights in the windows. He could hear the sounds of people talking and laughing. It was a small oasis in the middle of nowhere, and it was beautiful. He finally reached the outskirts of the town, his legs trembling with exhaustion. He slowed to a walk, panting heavily as he made his way down the deserted main street. The buildings stood tall and silent around him, their windows dark. It was late, too late for anyone to be out and about. He passed by a flickering street lamp, its light casting long shadows on the empty streets. A stray cat darted across his path, its eyes glowing in the darkness. The only sound was his own ragged breathing. Suddenly, he heard a noise behind him. He spun around, heart pounding in his chest. In the distance, he saw a figure standing under another flickering street lamp. It was too far away to make out any details, but he could feel the weight of their gaze on him. With a surge of panic, he started running again, his feet pounding against the pavement. He could hear the figure behind him now, their footsteps echoing in the still night air. He sprinted through the winding streets of the town, his heart racing with fear. The figure behind him was gaining ground, their footsteps growing louder and closer with each passing moment. He didn't dare look back, knowing that every second counted in his desperate escape. As he turned a corner, he saw a narrow alley up ahead and made a split-second decision to duck into it. The alley was dark and cramped, filled with discarded crates and trash cans. He pressed himself against the cold brick wall, trying to slow his breathing and quiet his pounding heart. The footsteps approached the entrance of the alley, then stopped. The man held his breath, willing himself to be invisible in the shadows. Seconds passed like hours, the tension in the air thickening with each heartbeat. Just when he thought he couldn't bear it any longer, he heard the sound of footsteps moving away from the alley. Relief flooded through him, but he knew he couldn't stay hidden for long. Taking a deep breath, he cautiously stepped out of the alley and peered around the corner. The figure was nowhere to be seen, but he knew he couldn't let his guard down just yet. He needed to find a safe place to hide and regroup. Spotting a rundown building with a broken window, he hurried towards it. The glass crunched beneath his feet as he climbed inside. Careful not to make any noise, the interior was dark and musty. Filled with dust and debris, it seemed abandoned, a perfect place to lay low for a while. He found a secluded corner and sank to the ground, his back against the wall. The adrenaline of his escape began to wear off, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. He closed his eyes, trying to calm his racing thoughts and listen for any signs of danger outside. Time passed slowly in the darkness, each minute feeling like an eternity. He wasn't sure how long he had been hiding when he heard the faint sound of footsteps approaching the building. His heart lurched in his chest as he held his breath, straining to listen. The footsteps grew louder and closer, echoing through the empty building like a drumbeat. He knew he had to stay hidden, stay silent. His muscles tensed, ready to spring into action if needed. The footsteps stopped just outside the room where he hid, the silence stretching taut. Then, a voice broke through the quiet. It was low and gravelly, sending a shiver down his spine. "I know you're in here," the voice called out. "There's no use hiding." His mind raced as he tried to come up with a plan. Should he stay put and hope for the best, or should he make a run for it and risk being caught? Before he could make a decision, the sound of footsteps approached the room. He could see the shadow of someone standing in the doorway, their silhouette outlined against the dim light filtering in from outside. With a quick intake of breath, he sprang to his feet and dashed for the nearest exit. The figure caught sight of him and lunged forward, but he was already out the door and running into the night. The chase was on once more, his pursuer hot on his heels as he sprinted through the empty streets. His lungs burned with exertion, but he pushed himself to go faster, to outrun the danger at his back. As he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with a group of shadowy figures lurking in the darkness. He skidded to a stop, heart pounding as he assessed his options. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. "We've got you now," a voice hissed from behind him, sending a chill down his spine. He was surrounded on all sides, trapped like a cornered animal. But then, from the corner of his eye, he spotted a glimmer of light coming from a nearby alleyway. Without hesitation, he made a split-second decision and veered towards it, his heart racing with hope. The narrow alley was a labyrinth of twists and turns, but he forged ahead, guided by the distant light like a beacon in the darkness. His pursuers shouted behind him, their voices growing louder as they gave chase. Adrenaline pumped through his veins, lending strength to his weary limbs as he ran towards the promise of escape. As he neared the end of the alley, he saw a rusty fire escape ladder leading up the side of a building. Without hesitation, he leaped for it, his fingers grasping desperately for purchase on the cold metal rungs. He climbed with all the speed and agility he could muster, each level gained bringing him closer to freedom. The shouts of his pursuers echoed below him, their anger fueling his determination to escape at any cost. Finally reaching the rooftop, he scrambled over the ledge and onto solid ground. Gasping for breath, he took in his surroundings, a maze of interconnected rooftops stretching out before him, illuminated by the pale light of the moon. The night air was cool against his sweat-soaked skin as he searched for a way to continue his desperate flight, and in the distance, he could hear the sound of sirens wailing, growing louder with each passing moment. Time was running out, and he knew he had to find a way to disappear into the shadows before it was too late. Scanning the expanse of rooftops, he spotted a series of clotheslines strung between two buildings. Without hesitating, he darted towards them, his heart hammering in his chest. With agile movements, he leaped onto the nearest clothesline and began to slide across the gap towards the next building, praying that it would hold his weight. In an instant, he tumbled to the ground, and before he could hit the floor, beep, beep, beep. His alarm clock went off, jolting him awake. John's eyes snapped open, the remnants of the dream still lingering in his mind. He lay in bed, breathing heavily as he tried to shake off the adrenaline that pulsed through his veins. The sound of the alarm clock pierced the air, cutting through the remnants of the night's imagined chase. As he swung his legs over the side of the bed, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment that the thrilling chase was nothing but a figment of his imagination. Standing up, he stretched his limbs, feeling a dull ache from sleeping in an awkward position. With a rueful smile, John silenced the blaring alarm and made his way to the window. Dawn was breaking outside, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and orange. The city below was just beginning to stir, the streets empty and quiet in the early morning light. John took a moment to savor the peacefulness of the dawn, the remnants of his dream fading away as he welcomed the new day.